So I'm just doing a little short daily transit for folks if you're interested. Hello, Carolina from Argentina. Thanks for checking in. I've been keeping an eye on this for some time now, and it's here. Let me just put in a couple of little bits of green for some sense of hope. But as you can see, according to my astrodoodle, we have a lot of red ink. How's your day going? So, when I saw this building up, you can see, look, the beautiful thing with astrology is that it's very mathematical and it's very pure. Excuse me, I don't have much of a voice today, so I won't be on very long. Yep, red lines, I'm sorry. So, it's all about the money, honey. Let me put in some symbols, okay? Taurus, right over here. And we've got the North Node over here. Okay, we've got Mercury over here. We've got Venus over here, and Venus and Uranus over here. We've got Jupiter and Mars, and we've got the sad Chiron over here. We've got Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto. So, I've been expecting this for quite a while now. This is only a fleeting thing, remember, because this heavy aspect here is bouncing off of the moon, but the sheer scale of this thing is what blows my mind. Now, a lot of people like myself are also keeping a very close eye on the Jupiter-Mars alignment in Aries. As predicted, it was a massive expansion of violence and warfare and riots and shootings all across the world, as expected. But this one was my concern, because this is all about money. It's about global finance. And the way I look at it, okay, if you look at it really close up, Venus is rules. It's one of the ruling planets for Taurus, right? Venus is all about money. We've got Uranus in Taurus, which is all about massive disruptions and upheavals in global finance. We've got the North Node in Taurus, basically saying we have to find ways to get our finances in order because it's really, really, really bad. It isn't just about finances, it's the way that human beings manage resources. If you think of money, and it's all related to resources, things like oil, gas, wheat, soy, corn, cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, seafood, minerals. Okay, well, that's the opposing side over here, under the ground, things like, gold, aluminum, iron, uranium. So that's under a lot of pressure here as well, indirectly, by opposition. I won't put that in there, but it is there. And in a few days, we're going to find another very nasty T-square here once the moon reaches up into Scorpio. I'm just giving you a heads up, okay? So it's like we've got a huge amplifier that is resonating very, very, very loud red alerts across the earth regarding danger signs. The most obvious one to measure is money, is the markets. I made a few notes for today. I just want to get into it briefly. Okay, well, Saturn in Aquarius, of course, is putting huge stress on the global financial system to find out ways that it can work for humanity as opposed to the elites. The elites are having trouble trying to hold on to their power and their control. And there are some very, very notable, very worthy authors and pundits who are, like myself, predicting the demise of China, despite the incredible, let's say, bullying, bombastic nature of China that's being shown across the world right now. The first thing I made here on my notes is about the astrodoodle, all about the money. What the hell is going on? Well, what the hell is going on is something like this. As you know, I'll just do a very quick chart. As you know, I'll do a little one over here. 1913 to 2022. And then we're going to go to 24 and beyond. So this is when the United States Federal Reserve officially inserted itself into the American government. And the American government succumbed to the seduction of the United States Federal Reserve, the Fed. Immediately in 1913, the Fed started printing money, issuing money. And credit and debt was being offered everywhere. The markets were flooded with money. This is basically in America, especially back east in New York City. And so it's not a surprise that very quickly, very, very quickly, World War I came about. That's over here. And that was resolved pretty quickly. And the printing of money exploded until you reached 1929. World War I, and then printing money, 1929, the roaring 20s. This was basically the curve of printing money, and then it all collapsed because ultimately, because it's fake money, it's fiat money, eventually people lose trust and everything collapses. And so you had a 10-year period of the Great Depression. Okay? And then you had World War II. So they created astronomical debt very quickly. And came out of that. And America became now kind of like the reserve currency of the world. And it was still very choppy. And then in 1971, as you know, America went off the gold standard because up till now everything was based on gold. So at least the United States dollar had the semblance of real money, even though it was all obtained by theft. Anyway, by 1971, America was already incapable of covering its debts because of printing so much money. And the government, the more money the government gets, the more money it wants, the more money it spends. And so after 1945, we had this kind of amazing boom period in the United States while money was still closely tied to gold. And then after it was released from the gold standard, we had ups and downs, but essentially it kind of went like this. Okay, to where we are today. Expanding the money supply. It's called inflation. Now let's go forward to a little more modern chart over here. 2008, 2022, and then 23, and then 24. Okay, this is where we are now. So in 2008 we had the massive crash, of course, because that was Pluto in Sagittarius over here, where everybody got so, hello Lorraine, everybody got so convinced that we were going to have endless good fortune forever. Pluto in Sagittarius. Of course, it was destined to explode, so it collapsed. Bam! Obama shakes the hand of the Federal Reserve, gives them $100 billion, $1,000 billion, $1 trillion basically to bail them out, and they start all over again. So there are lots of ups and downs in between then, but essentially it looks like this. I'm going to be very rudimentary. This is kind of what's happening now. All of this, all the ups and downs since 2008 to 2018, 2019 are the result simply of printing money. This is nothing to do with the merits of the economy or the skills of our workers or the brains of our scientists or anything. All that stuff is good, but it's all fueled by debt and fake money. And it gets so extreme that you can't control it. This is just basically like inflating a balloon, because the Fed doesn't like to admit it, but they don't really have a solution to this. How do you get out of this? Because this is basically a massive Ponzi scheme, and it just goes on forever. The problem is it doesn't. It eventually collapses. Okay, historically it always collapses. All of these cycles collapse when you abuse money. Okay. Hello, Sarah. And so we're at that stage again, and we're at a point right now where we are going through intense financial instability. It's because we've reached the point of kind of no return for the United States dollar and the United States Federal Reserve and the United States federal government. Okay, just call it USA. So what's happening is we are witnessing live in real time the implosion of the United States dollar. Nobody wants to think about it, nobody wants to talk about it, but that's where we're headed. I'm not a financial advisor, so these are just my opinions and my feelings and my thoughts, and I'm just sharing them with you. But it's very interesting how they match the astrology. So, let me go back over here. I don't know if any of you noticed, but there was a meeting at the White House last week. And there was Jerome, there was Janet, and there was Joe. Jerome represents the Fed. That's all the money that's printed in the world. Janet represents the money that she manages for Joe. And they were in a room together, and this was filmed and released to the public. And basically, they all looked at each other and they realized, we don't have a plan. We do not have a plan, people. We already know that the end is coming, and the only thing that we can do is keep printing, because they know, Jerome knows, that the only way to stop this is by raising interest rates. Okay? They have to go up to match inflation. Okay? Interest rates. That's the cure. That's how you cure this problem. That's how you get back to reality. You raise interest rates to match the inflation. The inflation, according to the government, is around 8%. Okay? Realistically, I think it's more like 18%. It's very, very bad. And it's extremely bad in the weakest places on earth. Okay? Over here. This is where it's very, very, very bad. All over here, 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 all over here. Sorry, Lina, but even in Argentina, all over here, all over here. It's really, really bad. Inflation is going absolutely berserk. Inflation is just another word for prices going up and up and up. You pay more and more dollars for the same thing. And that is a direct result of printing money, which is a direct result of the decisions of the United States Federal Reserve. And their behavior is affecting the whole of planet Earth, the whole of the global economy. Every single person, every corporation, every millionaire, every multi-billionaire, every pauper, everybody on Earth is being affected by the behavior of these three people and the institutions that they represent. And it's bad. Okay? Oh, it's not in. Okay, Oh, I'm happy for you, Sarah. Thank you. You're very lucky, Sarah. There are some places that have it really, really bad. So anyway, in order to combat the inflation, we would have to raise interest rates about 8, 10, 12%. If we do that, then this will go like this. Okay? And it will be economic devastation for the whole of planet Earth. Okay? So they're terrified. They can't do it. They can't do it because they know that if they do the right thing in order to destroy their business, their model, it's going to send the world into a catastrophic deflation, in fact, a complete, utter depression. And it'll be war and violence and riots across the streets. So what they're trying to do is convince everybody that this is not happening. All that's going to happen is that we're going to have a little bit of a bumpy time. I'm sorry, but nature takes over after a while. So I'm talking about inflation. It's a very difficult subject to describe, even for Janet, even for Joe, even for Jerome. They don't understand it. But anyway, they're at the root of the problem. So I showed a little chart as best I could. So the violence and riots, the way I see it, are directly a result and a parallel consequence of the extreme inflation that we're dealing with, okay? Let's put this in red, okay? Red, red, red. Bad news, bad news, bad news, okay? So that's the global financial markets. Of course, along with all this energy here in Taurus, we've got Venus, Uranus, North Node, and Mercury in Taurus, all in heavy conflicted angles with Saturn and the Moon right now. So this should be a very serious wake-up moment for everybody on Earth. It's not, because very few people watch my channel, but it should be a wake-up. You know, of course, if you're in Sri Lanka, you know what is happening. This is very bad. But it's bigger than that. All of this Taurus energy represents our food, our animals, our trees, our oceans, the rivers and lakes, all our natural resources, everything. And so, the way I see it, in order for these folks to cover up about how bad things are, they're working very closely with these folks. That is Klaus and his gang. Do you recognize this? WEF, World Economic Forum, and the United Nations, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is going to take over the CDC, Center for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health. Of course, now we have the Bilderberg Group, who just had their meeting after the WEF Davos meetings, and it's all about managing global resources, including human beings, okay? These folks operate, they essentially operate as the owners and managers of all the natural resources on Earth. Everything. And that includes human beings, because human beings are a natural resource as far as these folks are concerned. As far as these folks are concerned, we are cattle, and they need to farm us more efficiently. They also need to do what is called a culling, because there's too many of us. So they're trying to figure out ways how to cull humanity from 8 billion down to 2 million. It's quite tricky. It's actually quite tricky, because how do they do it without anybody figuring out that they're the ones doing it? But they're laughing because they actually think they're going to get away with it. So I'm going to underline these folks as well. It's bad news. I personally believe that these folks here have some very, very, very dark energy associated with them. And they cover it all with what looks like an all-encompassing, beautiful, globalized one world order, a new world order where we have complete control and domination of the whole of humanity, and every piece of water, land on earth is all under the control of these folks here. It already is to a major extent, but they want to make it much more. And they're having a problem because there are some Americans who don't want this to happen. So, what's the link to the United States? Well, apart from the Federal Reserve, you see, a lot of these things that are happening, a lot of these things that are happening with global financial chaos pivot around the United States because, like it or not, the United States is going through its Pluto return, and since 1776, when the United States was just a very, let's say, an unorganized collection of populations and people, and it was consolidated into its birth, 1776, to something that they call the United States of America. At that point in time, the United States and the populations were just another group of people. But they became so successful at being successful human beings that their behavior affected the whole of planet Earth to where we are today, where the United States Federal Reserve is essentially in control of the global financial system, whether we like it or know it or not. Okay? Hello, Diana. And so, it sounds absolutely insane, but what we have is a tiny collection of people with suits and ties, and they hang out in Davos in Switzerland, and Western Europe, and in Washington, and in some places in New York and San Francisco mostly. Those are the sort of centers where these people hang out. And they have decided it is time to take over the world completely. What they're trying to do is create a new world order. They call it Agenda 2030. They're trying to wrap it up in how they're going to save you. Remember, if any politician comes up and says, vote for me and I will save you, you need to start running as fast as possible, or get some guns and load them up and get some ammo as fast as possible, okay? Now, here in the United States, the problem we have in the United States is we have this thing called the Constitution. And right now, this thing here is the curse to the world globalists. This is the ultimate curse. This is the ultimate roadblock. This is the ultimate defense system against the insanity of these globalists. In the United States, there's about 330 million people, and about, I would say, probably 30% of them understand this, and it's part of their life. The rest, I would say the other 50, 60, 70%, don't have any idea what this is all about. All they do is consume and produce and consume and produce and operate as very efficient debt cows on the debt farm. Okay, that's kind of how it works. But there's enough people in the United States who abide by this Constitution and abide by our Declaration of Independence as created by what we call the Founding Fathers. And we have right at the very beginning over here, this is the Bill of Rights in 1791. The First Amendment is basically, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is the First Amendment. The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's it. There's a lot more stuff going on, but the First and the Second Amendment are what is causing the big roadblock to these people taking over the world. Okay? Now, these people here, they only amount to a handful of, I would say, about 10,000 people at most. And they're all the bosses and the CEOs and the hedge fund managers of, the biggest and of the very, very biggest financial institutions and political operations. But essentially, it's all about the money. So the money can't do anything without the ability. In other words, these folks have amazing plans according to their ideas of how the world should work. As far as they're concerned, what they want is for the world to work on a business model and a political model based exactly on what's happening in China right now. Okay? What these folks are trying to do is impose globalized communism. It's not really communism. It's more like tyranny and totalitarianism. But the nearest example would be the Chinese Communist Party over here. And for that to happen, to be able to operate at that level where you have absolute power, absolute control, and absolute money, you have to use violence, okay? And you have to shut people up. So guess what's happening? In the United States, oh, isn't it interesting that we're right on cue, we're having hundreds of shootings, of course, and we've got mass censorship throughout the media. So all these shootings relate, of course, to the Second Amendment. So with all these shootings that seem to be happening right on cue, I know it sounds disgusting to hint or label the possibility that some of these shootings are, let's say, fermented by some of these institutions in here and in here, because they have to get rid of the Second Amendment. So the best way to get rid of the Second Amendment, as far as they're concerned, is to create so much fear, panic, and disaster, and pain, and suffering, and shock regarding shootings that ultimately the American public and the American government submits to gun controls, and the Second Amendment is destroyed. Simultaneously, they're doing everything they can to censor free speech. Okay? You kill the Second Amendment, you kill the First Amendment. You can't kill the Second Amendment without the First. You can't kill the First Amendment without killing the Second Amendment. To kill the Second Amendment, there's going to be a lot of blood. It's not going to happen. Okay? They're going to try. These people are going to try. But it's not going to happen. So in the end, you condense all of this and it just comes down to nature. The Taurus energy is all about nature when I think of it like that. And we're part of nature. We're just a group of organisms, 8 billion organisms that have decided to populate the world and do what we do, how we do it. And there's a lot of fermentation going on because inside the 8 billion people, there is a tremendous amount of conflict because some of those people want to take control of all the other people and farm them to the benefit of the elites, okay? It didn't used to be that way. It used to be that there were what we would call, nations. And everybody was happy to live inside their nation and be who they are and get involved in global trade and global finance. But that's not enough for these people. That's not enough for these folks because they have become too rich, too successful to turn back. They want more. They want it all. Okay? Now they also have another problem with Russia and China because really Russia and China, they're not very keen on getting involved with the New World Order because they just want to keep their own world order. Russia wants to keep its own world order. That's a problem for these guys. China wants to keep its own world order, and that's a problem for these guys. And why is that so? Because China wants the whole world as well. Okay? So what in effect you have happening is China versus the WEF. Okay? I mean, it's absolutely bizarre what's happening. But again, it is what it is. So that's where we are at the moment. And of course there's other amazing things happening. I like to watch beautiful nature videos on YouTube about animals and humans and the interaction and the beauty and the pure love of animals. Okay, it's absolutely beautiful. So what is happening with nature? Now, of course, this is really it's partly to do with human behavior, but there's a lot of things happening with nature which are just a consequence of planet Earth changing and growing and moving. As you know, we have tectonic plates. The plates are moving all the time. We have weather. We have solar cycles, grand solar minimums, grand solar maximums, and so on. And climate changes go up, climate changes go down, they go up, they go down. We have mini ice ages, we have large ice ages, we have tropical periods where the whole planet Earth is much warmer than it is now, and then it cools down again, and so on and so on. It is a breathing, living thing. But right now, we have 8 billion people over here who are starting to get overheated because global temperatures have gone up about 1.5, almost 2 degrees in the last century. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot. And the way the projections are going right now, it looks like it's going to go up another 2 or 3 degrees Fahrenheit in the next 20, 30 years or so. That's going to be catastrophic. There's going to be millions and millions and millions of people dying because of heat and so on. Now, is that because we drive too many cars in America? I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think there are natural events happening which we have no control over at all. Anyway, I could rant on a little bit more. Yeah, actually, now I think about it, I want to mention a couple of other things. That stuff that's happening over here with these folks, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, okay, these are not elected people. Remember that. These are just a bunch of academics and elites and technocrats and corporate leaders and banking leaders who have so much money and so much power and control already. They have basically appointed themselves as the administrators and owners and operators of humanity. And it's happening because nobody can stop them. And so they essentially live at the very, 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 very tippity top of the pyramid of power. Okay? Power, wealth, control, and money. And how can you explain this? Like, whoever is closest to the printing press benefits the most and suffers the least. Okay? So the people who are closest to the printing presses are basically the United States, Western Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Hong Kong, China. And then after that, they get farther and farther away from the printing presses, and they suffer more and more and more. Over here in Washington, and over here, and a few folks over here, they're so close to the printing press, like, Nancy Pelosi and her husband and stuff. They benefit tremendously. The bosses on Wall Street, they benefit tremendously from the printing press. There are people in the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, they've made more money on profits in the previous century. You have to remember that. It's all staged, folks. Everything's staged. It's all planned out. All right, so I'm just going to check in and say hello for a few minutes. Hello, Karen. So I'm having a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening rant over here because I had to get it out. I feel like to me, it's like a weather report. You know how they have hurricane season in Florida and Texas and Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Okay, that's in the United States. There is astrological weather too. And there are certain times when the weather can be very precarious. Again, like Mark Moss says, it's sort of like surfing. There's sometimes good days and bad days, and you have to be aware of it. That's why I do the astrology. I do it mostly because if I don't, I end up basically like roadkill. Psychological, emotional, financial, physical roadkill For some reason, my body, my astrology, my psychology, my existence is extremely like hypersensitive. You know, that's probably why I have a history of mediumship and psychic readings and tarot and astrology. And at my center, I'm kind of an artist and a writer and a musician. And those kinds of folks typically have a tendency to be a little bit out there and a little bit too connected to the great beyond and not enough connection here to planet Earth. Okay? So I'm one of those people. I can't help it. That's just how I am. And so I have to be careful. So in order for me to survive here on planet Earth, I watch the planets, because that has proven to me to be the most effective and sure and reliable source of, let's say, data or information from which I can calculate a safer journey. Like right now, when I look at the chart, man, it's bad news. It's bad for the global finances. Now, at the very, very top, it's still working for some of them. Okay? It's working extremely well. Okay? As they say, it's all planned out. The big frauds, we already know that. The big Neptune era that we've been dealing for the last year, we've kind of got through that right now. Neptune is in Pisces for a few more years, but we've kind of got through it. It really started with Donald Trump and the draining of the swamp, and then eventually the swamp, once the swamp is drained in Washington, then the swamp creatures are exposed. And now you've probably noticed that a lot of the swamp creatures are squirming around inside America, trying to make it look like they're good people, but they are very, very, very slimy, and they live in a highly corrupt, highly organized, self-serving environment called the United States federal government. And so these people who are guilty of treason and conspiracy are basically walking away free. But at least we spotted them. We spotted them. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up now because I don't want to take up your evening. I just wanted to get this stuff off of my chest. I just want to show this again. Here's planet Earth. Here's the astrology for today, right now. We've built up to it from yesterday, and we've got a little bit more tomorrow. We'll have a tiny bit of relief, and then we're going to have some serious issues in about 4 or 5 days when the moon is up here in Scorpio, opposing all of this Uranus energy in Taurus. So just be aware, okay? Please be aware. Right now, this is very bad. It's the way I see it. This correlates to all the incredibly bad news that's happening right now in the global economy, okay? Well, in global politics and warfare, okay? Remember, there's a lot of warfare. Warfare is being extremely amplified right now. China is going like, China is like that. Russia is like that. Bam, 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 okay? So everything is exactly as it should be, okay? Why is that so? It's because it can't be any other way. Things are the way they are. So the big question is, what do we do now? What now? What now? What now? What are you going to do now that you're aware of this? If you're not aware of this, you need to become aware of this. If you're not aware of this, you can expect to become, it's very possible you can become a victim of this. So just giving you a heads up. You don't want to be a victim. You might as well become aware. At least you have a chance, okay? All right, so I am going to check out now. Thank you so much. I hope some of you got something out of this. Please subscribe. Please press the like buttons, and please press the bell so people can actually get the notifications. It's really, really important. Really, really important. I don't know how else to express it. I really don't know. So let's see. I think I'm just going to wrap it out. Okay. Thank you. Hope you don't mind. Hold on. What am I doing? Come on.